They weren't just spice traders. The Dutch East India Company built an empire, ran its own army, started wars, colonized countries, and made insane profits, all before most modern corporations even existed. But what if I told you they also invented one of the most dangerous business models in history? We hear about Google, Amazon, and Apple dominating the world today. But centuries ago there was one company that did it all: trade, war, law, and government under one roof. The Dutch East India Company, also known as the VOC, was like Amazon, the US Army, and a colonial government rolled into one. And it changed the world forever, in ways we still feel today. What have we forgotten about the VOC? So here's the real question. Why don't we talk about this company more often? Why does it barely show up in school textbooks, or when people talk about global empires? Because once you peel back the curtain, what you find isn't just a successful business. It's a story of exploitation, greed, slavery, piracy, and corporate colonialism. The VOC didn't just explore the world, it shaped it, broke it, and profited from it. This isn't just about history. It's about power, how one company rewrote the rules of the game and set the tone for every global business that came after. Let's go back to the early 1600s. The Netherlands was a small European country with a massive ambition: dominate global trade. At the time, spices like nutmeg, pepper, cloves, and cinnamon were worth more than gold in Europe. And those spices? They came from a place called the Spice Islands, known today as the Maluku Islands in Indonesia. But getting there wasn't easy. The Portuguese had already built a strong presence in the Indian Ocean. The Spanish were also fighting to claim territory, so the Dutch had to think bigger and smarter. That's when the idea of a unified trading company was born. In 1602, several smaller Dutch companies merged together to form one massive corporation, the Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, or VOC. And here's what's crazy. This wasn't just any company, it was granted power by the Dutch government to do things no modern business could legally do. Wage war, build forts, make treaties, take territory, raise a private army, execute justice. In short, they were a business with the power of a state. The VOC wasn't in the business of being fair. They were in the business of monopoly. Once they got to the Spice Islands, they didn't try to outbid the competition, they eliminated it. They drove out the Portuguese, clashed with local rulers, and used their military to force exclusive trade deals. They wanted control, not cooperation. If you didn't sell your spices only to the VOC, they'd burn your crops. If you resisted, they'd send in troops. Sometimes they just wiped entire villages off the map. One of the most brutal examples? The massacre of the Banda Islands in 1621. The Bandanese refused to give the VOC an exclusive nutmeg trade. So the VOC's military leader, Jan Pieter Zoon Cohen, led a deadly campaign. Thousands of locals were killed, enslaved, or starved to death. The VOC then brought in enslaved labor from elsewhere to keep the nutmeg flowing. And this wasn't a one-time event, it was their business model. Control resources, suppress opposition, maximize profit. Let's talk numbers. At its peak, the VOC had over 150 merchant ships, 40 warships, 10,000 private soldiers, a global network of 50-plus trading posts and bases, and nearly 1 million employees over its existence. That's not just big. That's bigger than most countries at the time. They didn't just operate in Indonesia. The VOC had bases in India, Japan, Sri Lanka, South Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and what's now Malaysia and Thailand. They also helped found the city of Batavia, modern-day Jakarta, turning it into the VOC's Asian headquarters. And here's something wild. The VOC was the first company in the world to issue stock. Yes, before the New York Stock Exchange even existed. Dutch citizens could buy shares in the company and earn dividends. This created an early form of capitalism that shaped how we trade and invest today. But behind the scenes, it was pure exploitation. Let's talk about what most history books skip over. The VOC ran on forced labor. They bought and sold enslaved people across Asia and Africa. From Madagascar to India to the Indonesian archipelago, enslaved workers were shipped, branded, and used to harvest spices, build fortresses, and man ships. Slavery wasn't an accident, it was baked into the VOC's business operations. And it gets worse, the company was notoriously corrupt. Many of its officials took bribes, embezzled funds, and set up side hustles using VOC ships and soldiers. One example, in 1740 in Batavia, VOC officials were involved in a horrific massacre of Chinese residents. Thousands were killed in a violent purge, fueled by paranoia and greed. And yet, the company kept operating like nothing happened. Let's zoom out. In South Africa, the VOC established the Cape Colony in 1652 as a rest stop between Europe and Asia, but it quickly turned into a settler colony. Indigenous Khoikhoi people were displaced, enslaved, and often wiped out by disease or violence. In Japan, the VOC was the only Western company allowed to trade during Japan's isolation period through a tiny artificial island called Dejima. To keep access, VOC officials had to bow, crawl, and even act out Dutch dances for Japanese officials. It was humiliating, but profitable. In India, the VOC battled the British East India Company in an ongoing turf war for control of ports like Surat and Pulicat. Spoiler, the British eventually won. But that brings up a big point. The VOC may have been powerful, but they weren't invincible. By the 1700s, things were falling apart. The VOC was stretched thin. Too many wars, too many corrupt officials, and too many colonies to manage. Meanwhile, competition from the British East India Company grew stronger. The British were more aggressive, better funded, and had newer ships. The VOC couldn't keep up. By 1799, the once mighty company was bankrupt. The Dutch government dissolved it and took over its assets. That was the end of the VOC, on paper. But the impact? That didn't go away. So what did the Dutch East India Company really do? They created the blueprint for modern global capitalism and colonialism. They showed how a corporation could use private military force, exploit people and resources for profit, influence entire governments, build empires, and still claim to be just doing business. The VOC wasn't just a company, it was a machine that turned violence into wealth and called it trade, and that legacy still shapes our world. From the way big corporations operate in developing countries, to how wealth is extracted from the global south, to how powerful companies dodge responsibility by hiding behind stock prices and shareholder value. The Dutch East India Company didn't just make history, it broke the rules and rewrote them. It proved that money and power could be blended into one unstoppable force. And it left behind a trail of wealth, war, and wounds that still haven't fully healed. So the next time you hear about a successful company changing the world, ask yourself, successful for who? If you enjoy our journey, please like and subscribe to our channel, and if you like our content and want to support me, you are welcome to buy me a coffee. The link is in the description box below.